I got a super quick one. As everybody knows, I've been deep in the performance optimization mines recently. One of the things that I have noticed is that embed iframes take a long time to just initialize. Um, and taking a quick peek at the code, I realized that a lot of that time is actually being spent generating the session token. And so if I share my screen, where are you? Sorry. There we go. So the session token actually doesn't need to be recreated every time. Um, it's good for 24 hours, I believe. So just to kind of give you an example, I just put in a very simple optimization to just not recreate the session token if it already exists and is valid. I actually just added a hour buffer so it'll recreate it just so nobody gets logged out. Um, so when you first load the frame, it's still kind of slow. But now if you go, basically any navigation or kind of reload of the frame within that session lifetime is substantially faster. So, this went from about a second to about 230 milliseconds. So shaved it down. It's about 25% of the time. Because the other sort of interesting takeaway here is that generating the session token should not have to take that long. So it opens up a very obvious next step here, which is to change the way we are generating session tokens to make them much faster. It's a bit of a bigger lift, but I'm going to go dive into that now because it just shouldn't need to be this way.
Does this mean that we would have people load up the iframe silently in another page in their app so that when they navigate to the page, it's just sitting there? Or like what
We're
is sort of the
already
thought on
having people.
initializing it?
Yeah, we're already having people do that. I think we can continue having them do that. Or I also think this may make that less necessary because, that second load should be a lot snappier. So I think, I think I was literally on a thread with Nate and Elliot in the past day or two about that specifically. And, we've already said that's fine. And we do it in Gleam, I believe. But it also, hopefully, like, knock on wood, we shouldn't need people to have to think about that kind of optimization.
Uh,
If we
I,
are
I don't want
persisting, sorry, go on.
to, yeah, I don't want to put Elliot on the spot, but if you're here, do you want to describe the two-step login that we're also going to add?
Idea behind the two-step login is that rather than forcing you to auth in and then perform all the CRUD work kind of associated with an SSO embed login, which includes things like user creation, user attribute association, group association, and so on. The two-step login will actually handle all of the CRUD work in a first step endpoint, which is actually just going to be a part of our API. So it'll just kind of come with our standard suite of API endpoints. And we'll generate an embed session. We'll create a user for you. We'll do all the sort of stuff that is the heavy lifting sort of work associated with an SSO embed login. And then from there, once that session is generated, it's valid for 5 minutes to be used. And you'll hit a second endpoint, or not necessarily a second endpoint, but you'll make a GET request to a separate URL using that session token that's returned from the first endpoint. And if it's used within 5 minutes, you'll go ahead and auth in as that SSO embed user. And, theoretically, the flow would be that an embed developer would, generate a session for their user behind the scenes, maybe like when they log in to whatever parent page is hosting us or embedding us. And then from there, the actual loading of the SSO content would feel super fast because all of the sort of heavy lifting has already been taken care of. So yeah, that's
And just to add one thing to that, or a couple pieces of detail that sort of dovetail with what Chris has been looking at. We'll likely expand that 5-minute limit to be longer. So you could imagine as an admin, let's say you have 1,000 embed users, you could schedule a script to run at night that generates a token for all of your 1,000 embed users and stores each token in your own database. And then when they wake up in the morning and go to log in, the work is just finding that token and then authorizing the session through us with the token. So all that slow, expensive CRUD work just gets uh, pushed into sort of like an async out of band process. Um, and then the other detail is we're looking really as a nice way to allow us to redeem the same token multiple times. So that just prevents us from having to do the token creation, user creation dance whenever, like a different tab is open and that has a different embed iframe. Um, so all these things should make that initial experience quite a bit snappier.
If we are like decoupling those steps of the authentication versus the content in the URL, would that potentially open the door to being able to have like deep links to, if I want to share someone a URL that brings them to a specific SSO URL content? So like I'm somewhere, I've navigated within the iframe, I grab a URL and I can come back to that URL later without having to like start from the same place.
Yeah, I mean that's what I just demoed, so that you would use what I demoed. So orthogonal to the two-step login, but they would all work together.
Okay, cool. Sorry if I missed something.